This will be another development update for Ace Racers SP. I have mostly one feature to show that's now added. First, as you can see, the velocity indicator is now working on the ISS interior. I don't know what was wrong. I didn't technically fix anything, but now that is fixed. So moving to a little bit more free space, I'll just jump right to the hot feature. You can see this big button right here, space drone power settings. So again, back to the interior of the space station. Here we have these two starred. They use separate small settings in a lower mass drone. So if you change the power settings of these, they will not change the power settings of these. And if you change these, they will not change these. And something you cannot change is that all of these different scenes here use a 100 mass drone, and these use a 50 mass drone. And actually the physical size is just a bit smaller. And that's because here you're on the interior of the International Space Station. You're flying a tinier drone. Your vehicle is even smaller. So actually the power settings are the same as they are on the other one, but you should see that even at the default power levels, you're a little bit more loose. You have a little bit more of everything because your vehicle is lighter. So you should bounce quite a bit differently as well. So actually in this map, it's quite a challenge. If you hit something, you spin really hard. You really have to be careful. You're in an enclosed space, and you don't want to bounce off anything because any bouncing at all can be catastrophic. So, but once again, you can switch to the power settings, and you can see it here. I'll just go ahead and change it. I'll change it to this outrageous number. And so you can see here it is. It's this outrageous number, 4,000. And then if I go to one of the normal ones, well, that's not fair. I changed this to 4,000 already. Here, I'll change it back. I'll set it back to default. This one was already 4,000. I've been using 4,000 as a test number, so I'll save that. And so then if you go here, you can see it's back to default. And then if I go back to the small one, it's still at 4,000. So there we go. But I've been setting it to 4,000 because it's really obvious. So to go back in here, now you know that the drone is at default. So I'm holding acceleration at max acceleration, and you can kind of get a feel for how much I'm accelerating there. This is at normal settings, so of course there's 4 or 5 power settings depending on the vehicle. The Rockhopper only has 4. The space vehicle has 5. So if you go to the power settings here, you can see that I can now set my normal setting to be at 4,000 power. I'll just hit save. I'll return to game, and now you should be able to tell that it's quite a bit faster at accelerating. So rather than flying around this little place in front of the astronaut and feeling like it's a small little place, now I can kind of fly around the entire space station and feel like it's kind of a small place. So here's this space shuttle. It's tiny now. At this speed, I would need more space actually. It would be harder to have quite as much fun in this. This whole space is like one little spot. But if I get back over here to where the astronaut is at, kill some of my velocity down a little bit so that I don't have to take all day doing it. And if I go back into my settings and go back to the default, now you can see that it takes quite a bit more time to do any acceleration. And that turns this into a much larger place. So, I mean, you can set it however you like, but the defaults are where they are because, first of all, I have no idea how much thrust a drone would realistically have, but you only have a small gas bottle, so I imagine you would set it to be so that it lasts as long as possible. And second of all, actually, this is a long distance for a very tiny vehicle to accelerate with on a little gas jet. I mean, this is like a whole football field right here. So I think it's fairly realistic that a space drone would not accelerate quite so quickly for something that somebody would use to fly a little camera around. But then the other thing, of course, is that switching to space mode here, now quickly in space mode you can see that it moves quite a bit more quickly. And that's because in space mode you're just trying to get around and place your hoops. So you don't want to take all day getting somewhere. You can crank up the speed on that as well. So here's a hoop right here. You can see the hoop is not terribly large. So at lower speeds, this hoop is big. So now you can have this hoop, and then you can have another hoop just right over here where the astronaut is. And there's some distance between these hoops. I mean, you can actually race that. It's perfectly raceable at that speed. But if you put this hoop there and this hoop there, and then you cranked up the speed really high, it would be hard to race. You would want a much bigger hoop, and you would want a lot more distance between them. And actually there's a free game called Fly Dangerous, where they do exactly that. They crank up the velocity to 9 million, and they make the hoop. The hoop is literally larger than this entire space station compared to the vehicle. You fly the vehicle right up to the edge of the hoop, and it's this tiny, tiny little object next to this enormous hoop. And that's just what speed is like. The faster you go, the less precision you have, and the much you need just more space in every way. So the speeds that I've kind of tuned it for is to kind of give you this little drone kind of experience, you know, and drones can be very exciting, but they go lower speeds, much shorter distances to be exciting. You know, a big, huge rocket hits 16,000 miles an hour, but a little thruster drone like this, you know, it can get from that place over here to this place over there. It can do that pretty quickly, and only on a little bit of gas. So that's kind of the goal there. So then another change that I made is that before, when you would race, if you were going to race, let me just build a race real quick. You can see in this blue dot that there's some visible lights there. That's reflections, and the race meshes used to have reflections as well. And now they do not. And so now the race meshes are unlit. And what that means is that no matter what direction you see them from, they all look the same. So the back looks like this, no matter where the light is coming from or how much light there is. And the front looks like this, no matter where the light is coming from and no matter how much light there is. And that works also from a distance. So I'm hoping that the transparency is enough that you can keep your trajectory going and maintain your trajectory. So you can see that the hoop did not advance to the next hoop, but when there's only one, it just restarts again. All of the races are infinite right now, so if I go through that however many times, it won't change. If I put another one, then it would switch. But so those are the two main changes that are in this particular update. But as you can probably guess, this right here is kind of a big deal. One other little feature that's now in the game is that you can half rotation and you can double rotation. And so initially when somebody said they would happily try the game out for me and tell me what they thought, their first reaction was, hey, they really wish they could do this right here. They wanted to turn up the thrust without turning up the torque, because they wanted to crank the thrust and get lots of acceleration and go fast. But they wanted to keep the rotation under control. But my defaults actually have a linear increase in both of them at the same time. So here, thrust doubles and rotation doubles. And thrust doubles again and rotation doubles again. And even though my drone, if you can see it, you can see that it actually has different thrusters showing for every action. that's something that I don't think is realistic for a small drone. So one thing about a drone that I think will just be a reality that space drone enthusiasts will have to face is that the same thruster that does propulsion is going to also have to do rotation. And there's some degree of control there where you can thrust less or more, and maybe it'll be a pulse that gives it, or it'll be pulse with modulation somehow, or maybe you will have multiple relays involved or multiple thrusters, but you'd really want to keep your weight down. And the unfortunate reality with using the same thruster for rotation and acceleration is that they'll be the same. They'll be similar. You'll have the same amount of power for each one. So when you want to get a lot more thrust out of the same thruster, you're going to end up having a lot more rotation as a side effect of that. It'll be certainly possible to engineer a device that doesn't work that way, but it will be one of these things where it'll just be an unfortunate reality that if you're going to have a lot of thrust, you're going to have to be delicate with the rotation, because it's going to have a lot of power for rotation, and it just takes the same amount of power to rotate and accelerate. But spinning around one time is not that much distance. So spinning a quarter turn, I mean, you're talking a few inches in the case of a small drone. You're talking at most a foot. Half a rotation might be a foot. So to accelerate to 1 foot per second of rotation, that's a lot more rotation than it is horizontal acceleration. So you just need way more power to do acceleration than you do to do rotation. Unless your vehicle is very long, and then only roll will work that way, and then of course, you know, the less efficient the shape is at rotating, then the more energy it's going to take to get it rotating any meaningful RPMs. But if your vehicle is very long, then a meaningful distance is going to be quite a bit further, because you can't maneuver in a small place. So the amount of distance that you will have to travel to get from one obstacle to the next with a rocket, I mean, in real life it's kilometers and kilometers and kilometers, thousands of kilometers, and then the amount of rotation you need to execute in that time is, you know, tens of yards with a full-size rocket. So no matter how you look at it, so on my normal power settings, if you get to very high power level, then you just need to be delicate with the rotation as well. And it's not killer, but that's the logic behind the presets. It's just the presets. There's no reason why you can't set them up however you want to now. And of course, with real drones and real vehicles, the limitations in the hardware are different and separate from the limitations in the software. And if you do have this very high setting for acceleration already in the game, then you should be able to have access to that setting with a lower torque setting. I mean, if you can turn anything down with software. So as long as your hardware has the potential to do something, then you can max at that. And then anything below that, it's just a matter of software calibration. Then that would be available to any pilot. But you can actually, I don't think there's a physical limit on just how much thrust you can. I don't really know. Let me just put some 9s in here. This will be an interesting experiment. So here, let me get rotated. I didn't change my. Whoa, my goodness. That is a lot of rotation. Yeah. So there's no limit on how much rotation, on how much speed you can get. I totally blew the game out just by accelerating so fast. My speed is at an exponent It's just insane. So you can set it however you like. And that was my goal the whole time. It's just only just now figured out how to program it. So again, just to go forever on the same subject, here we have Rockhopper power settings, same story. Here you can see that the rotational torque is quite a bit more, but actually if I get flying you can see that my acceleration is not that fast. So that's just kind of what I'm going for with that particular power setting. And you know, again, you can set it however you like. And if there's a limit for how fast you can go, because the computer will break, you'll just have to figure that out on your own. I don't know. I play with normal, so I'm sure you can go and figure that one out. Pretty easy. Just turn it down until it works for you. Alright, well, thank you very much. Check out Ace Racers AP on itch.io in the updated version with the bug fixes for the velocity indicator. We'll be in the process of posting right now. We're about halfway done uploading. So by the time this video goes up, this should be up. Alright.